And on behalf of the Nebraska Arts Council, I'd like to welcome you to this panel meeting. We have convened to review applications in the Arts Project Grant category. Decisions made by this panel will determine the funding for all applications. They will be reviewed by the NAC Council at the next meeting to convene on December 10th, 2024. I'd like for each of our panelists to introduce yourselves to one another and to those listening in, and I'll call upon you one by one. Tabitha Dunham.
Hello, I'm Tabitha Dunham. I'm the Director of Development at Mid-America Arts Alliance and happy to be here.
Morgan Ormsby.
Hello, Morgan Ormsby. I'm the Senior Development Director at Rabble Mill in the Bay.
Stephanie Plummer.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Plummer. I'm the grant writer for Kiewit Luminarium, a science center in Omaha.
And Kate Windley.
Hi, everyone. I'm an associate professor of visual art in North Georgia, and I also work with a nonprofit, the OCAF Center.
Thank you. Mike Markey is the Executive Director of the Arts Council. Mike, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Yes, thank you, Michelle, and thank you all for joining us today. First thing I want to do is encourage you to, if you get a minute, to sign into the comment section so that we know who all is joining us today. Then I want to thank you for the work that you're doing in the field and for these applications. They're all very interesting and they should get a good review today. Rachel Morgan has put together a wonderful panel of folks from across the country who will review these and give you some very helpful comments on them. So I encourage you to read what they have to say and take it to heart. Then I want to thank you for the work that you've done in letting your elected officials know about the work that you're doing. And I want to encourage you to continue to do that. We just had an election and there are some new elected officials out there and they're going to want to know about your organization and the arts in Nebraska. There are a bunch of new legislators, state legislators. They help determine how much funding we're going to get every year. And it would be good to know who your legislator is and to get to know them and invite them to your events and thank them. If you have any questions about who that is or how to approach them or anything like that, we'll be glad to work with you. There are other elected officials at the national level and at the local level. Local level is very important also. Your mayors, your city councilmen, those are the ones who are going to become state legislators in the future. So it's always good to get them coming to your events and to know more about what you're doing. I want to encourage you also to come to our Arts Advocacy Day on February 19th in the state capitol. We'll be sending out information in the near future, but it's an opportunity to meet with other folks in the arts who are doing similar work to you, to learn about what the important issues are, especially in terms of the legislators, there we go. And how to make your case known and the case of the arts in Nebraska. So do be looking for that and do please plan to join us. That's it. I'm going to hand you back to the experts. Congratulations on the work that you've done, and I can keep up the good work. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Rachel Morgan is Program Specialist for this grant category. Rachel, would you please explain the panel process to those listening in?
Absolutely. As Mike said, I want to thank anyone who is listening in and welcome you today. And if you haven't already, if you would take a moment to register and let us know that you're listening in, that's always nice to know. So just a reminder to our panelists that even though you can't see or hear an audience, they might be there. So they can see and hear you, of course, unless you stop your mic or your video. We will look to take a break each hour. And for those of you listening in, we'll let you know when we're going to restart. We'll put a little slide up on the video to let you know that we're taking a short break, and then we'll just come back at that time. So all of the panelists have received and read all applications in advance of this panel meeting, and each application has been assigned a primary and a secondary reviewer. Applications will be discussed and then individually scored by each panelist according to the published criteria for this category. The panelist scores will then be averaged, and the applications will be ranked according to the average score, highest to lowest. And the panelists will then determine which of the applications merit funding based on the scores. There's a mathematical formula that will be later applied to determine the grant award amount for the approved applications. And award calculations will be based on the average score for each application and the available funds in the category. Higher ranking applications will receive a greater percentage of their request. The next staff members are here to assist with the panel process. We remain neutral. We do not influence the panel process. And so as such, we do not engage in the panel discussions except to add clarification about grants or procedures if appropriate and when needed. Do want to say though, if you ever have questions about your application or your project before submission, please contact us. We are more than happy to talk through that process and the grants. So final note, the applications will be discussed in alphabetical order. And I believe our communications manager, Sam Henney, will put into the live stream which application we will be reviewing next. And that is it. Back to you, Michelle.
All right, thank you. Let's begin. Rachel Morgan will provide a brief synopsis of each application. I'll then call upon panelists one by one for your comments in this order: primary reviewer, the secondary reviewer, and then the remaining reviewers one at a time. We'll now proceed with the first application, the Amplify Arts.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michelle. So alternate currents parallels the components of a Master's Fine Arts program, which does not exist in the Omaha Council Bluffs area. Cohorts of 10 members per year share resources, publish work, and organize public-facing exhibits and discussions. Alternate Currents builds connections between artists, organizers, and cultural workers and the broader community, inviting public participation, conversation, and co-creation that strengthens resident retention and attracts creative thinkers to the city. Any awarded funds will be used to compensate artists participating in the program as the facilitators or as the program's facilitator, discussion panelist, or blog contributors, or to offset costs associated with marketing the public discussion series.
All right. Stephanie, your comments?
Yeah. So overall, a really great application, really well articulated, and there's a clear vision for this project. I like that the cohort members pick the studios to visit. It sounds like there's a lot of ownership given to the artists throughout this experience, and that really will enhance the impact of the program on the artist. The project description is well described with a clear plan that's visible through that description. And there's a really clear statement of why the program is needed in our area. There are really great work samples that show the work of past artists in the program. And I really appreciate that those websites are very professional, because that also makes the artist look good, which artists really can always use like that kind of exposure, I think. I would have liked to see a few photos alongside those that were available on the website that included things like the studio visits or other activities that were more rooted in that sort of like MFA Master of Fine Arts structure, where there's some like educational content, just to kind of see those interactions. That would have been nice. For planning and evaluation, the goals and evaluation methods fit together and make sense for the type of program this is. I'm impressed that they survey past cohort members. So these past cohort members are not like forgotten. They're still seen as a good resource for the organization and for the program. They also put out an area-wide survey, and that really, I think, is smart because that can help determine whether the program still fits with the needs of the community. They didn't explain, though, what the progress markers are. It's a great discussion, but I really wanted something that's like a very clear benchmark, like how many surveys or something like that with a number. I would have loved to see the timeline expanded to include things like fundraising. And for me, that really ties into the budget because the budget had like really one big grant, which is great. That does a lot to support the program. But I think a little more fundraising in those two places could translate to more money given to the artists. And granted, an MFA program doesn't pay people, it costs people. But still, these are artists who are participating in the program, and it would be really great to support their long-term career by providing more funds. For outreach and engagement, I do appreciate that there is an emphasis on paying artists for work. And in particular, I really appreciate Amplify Art's use of WageWorks, which I've referred to myself in the past, and it's a really great guideline and tool. There's a great marketing plan. It's varied with attention paid to who the target audience or audiences are. And I appreciate that they have made efforts in regards to language and their application process. I would have liked them to talk a little bit more about the relationship with local or regional peer organizations in the partnership section. They mentioned some of those relationships in the promotion response, but there's just not as much detail as I would have liked. And for me, I think that's important because a Master of Fine Arts program, one of the things you're going to do is you're going to network and make connections to other organizations, both locally and regionally. And so I wanted a little bit more depth in that area. The outreach is really logical, but I wanted to hear more about how they attract applicants to the process. And the letter from the former participant is really enthusiastic and explains the impact well. I do also appreciate the board members' perspective because they participated in the program. But I think in general, for me, I always prefer to see letters that are from someone who's not directly involved in the organization. And that's my notes.
Right. Thank you, Stephanie. Tabitha, your thoughts?
I think Stephanie did a really wonderful job covering most of it. I'll just add a couple of things here. And the artistic quality, I would have loved to see more from past artists. I think I struggled a little bit with this application because I didn't get that. I'm struggling to see what the artistic results really are of the program. It does seem to fill a gap in the community, and I appreciate the workforce development component. But I think if like in the work samples, they had been actual representations of past artists' work, that would have really helped. I thought the goals were great and outlined very clearly. I appreciated the evaluation process. The application, though, the need for the project seems to hinge on the fact that there's not an MFA program in Omaha, and but it never goes into talking about why an artist needs that. So unless you are an artist that maybe has been through this, maybe you just kind of have to infer that this is needed. So I think that would really strengthen the application to, justify the need for an MFA program or something that is comparable to that.
Great. Morgan, any thoughts?
I have absolutely nothing to add. Stephanie and Tabitha did an amazing job hitting on everything that I had written and thought about this application. So nothing to add.
Thank you. And Kate?
Hi, yeah, that was a very detailed review, so thank you. But yeah, the Bemis Center wrote one of the reference letters, which is nationally and reputable organization. And it says there's like 40 applicants and they select 10 for the cohort. So I would like to know, as an artist always, is it an internal, meaning former applicants review that went through the program, or are you pulling people from across the state? If it's a 2-year commitment, obviously they're living in the community. So a lot of information on like how you're pulling your applicants and your internal review process. But I wanted to tell you it was really well organized. I liked all the documentation on your website. It gave me a clear understanding of the significance of what you're doing. And I love that it's a 2-year commitment versus a 1-month commitment, because you're really significantly offering a life-changing opportunity with the services you're offering. So that's my thoughts.
Great. All right, so panelists, please adjust your scores if you need to, and raise your hand when you're done so we know we can move on to the next application. All right, thank you. We'll move on to the Asian Community and Cultural Center.
So the 2025 Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month celebration is going to be held on Saturday, May 3rd from 1 to 5 p.m. at the Sandhills Global Event Center, which is located in Lincoln. They anticipate 2,000 people or more to attend and participate in the event. The grant funds will help to pay for 12 to 13 performance groups, the event venue, sound system, and lights.
All right, thank you. Stephanie, your thoughts?
Yeah, so there were a lot of questions I had in the application. I think for one, there really was not enough information about the ensembles, performers, vendors in the project description area. I really there was just not enough information there. I understand their artistic merit statement, but I think there could have been more detail, particularly in how the larger themes and purpose of the event relate to the selected artist. So again, if there's not enough information about the artist, it's really hard to tell what the importance to the community is. And then throughout this entire section that kind of came up, I felt like the work samples really didn't fill in some of the questions I had. And then the artist bios also did show the artists were rooted in tradition, but I felt the bios could have been more robust or complete. And then in the planning and evaluation, the administrative bios I thought really showed a lot of experience coordinating projects like this and working with the target audiences. The goals also seem very connected to the evaluation methods, but I think it would improve the application to discuss what constitutes success for the event. Like a certain percent of feedback that is a certain amount of feedback that is a positive rating for this question on the survey, for example, or, it's clear they want 2,000 people, but beyond that, what are the kind of numerical benchmarks you're looking for? The project timeline could be expanded to include post-event evaluations. I think for an event like this, it's important for the team to come together and discuss what worked and what didn't. And it's good to see that on a timeline. There are 13 performers listed in the budget, but less than half the number represented in the bios. So I was wondering why that is. It wasn't clear to me where that difference came from. The budget itself seems like there are also gaps. There are costs I would expect to see for an event like this, not included. And the income page has few line items there as well. So I had some concerns about the budget. The amount of money that seems to be going to staff rather than the performers also I felt was a bit out of balance. And this is just my personal opinion. So this is, take this for what it's worth. But I think in a project budget, an executive director's pay, like there should be a reason why that's in there, because it is a project rather than an operating support application. So for me, I kind of looked at that and said, you know, why would this be in here? If it is in here, you know, what kind of role does the executive director have in this specific project? For outreach and engagement, I appreciate the statistics about the target audience, but wanted them to get a little bit more detailed about the Lincoln area. The programming impact response makes sense. The multilingual strategy for such a diverse group is smart and inclusive. And overall, I thought the marketing strategies were sound and varied and tailored to the audiences. I think that's an important thing, that it's tailored because they know their audience. So I think that's really a strength here. They mentioned translation service, but I didn't really see those present in other areas of the application. The partner list is really great, but I think it would strengthen the application to include more description of how they're assisting with the event or what they're bringing to that partnership table. Those are my comments.
Thank you. Morgan?
Very similar thoughts to what Steph has mentioned. So I noticed in the budget there was no expenses included for things like printing, but they talked about flyer distribution being one of their marketing efforts. And then similarly with evaluation tracking, I loved that there was several avenues through which they wanted to do it. So surveys, interviews, attendance and demographics tracking, but didn't really see that evaluation process reflected in the timeline. And then other than that, I don't know that I have much to add into Steph's very thorough review.
Thank you. Tabitha?
Yeah, I agree that Stephanie did and Morgan did a great job. The thing I would add is in maybe future applications, when you get to the work samples part, maybe include like videos of, I mean, I get the impression that this is an annual event. So if you have videos of performances that you could share, that would be a lot stronger than sharing a flyer. You know, those are the types of work samples that would really elevate and let us see the artistic merit of the project.
Thank you. Kate?
Hi, yeah. So I looked at there was the Harvest Festival, and then there's also the Asian American Pacific Island Festival. So two different festivals promoted by the organization. And I was trying to figure out how long this festival had existed, what's the history of this festival, and I could have used a little bit more information on this specific festival and the history of the festival. I'm really into any kind of outdoor activity, including information about climate, and, sort of should there be alternate weather type funding and in the application to make sure, for example, if it's a heat advisory that day, how does the event, security and heat, that kind of stuff. But also, it seemed like it really targeted regional groups, which is wonderful because everybody needs the opportunity to present themselves. And I looked at a lot of the performers' sites and tried to see their videos. But I think one thing that pulls the crowd is like a headliner, like really putting not only the regional groups along with a headliner. And so school groups, regional, age groups of different demographics, and then some kind of a bigger headlining group that could really draw in the bigger, broader community. I think can make it a really successful event. I looked at the company, the organization's website, and obviously doing really good work with a large population of people. You have a robust staff. It included a food budget of $4,600, but I wasn't sure if the food is going to be free for people coming, or like how does that correlate with people visiting the festival exactly? And so just some clarity about like what would be, what would be included in that funding would be good. But overall, I looked at the census to see how many, Asian Americans were in the community and how it fit with your grant. And I think just clarity on the performers, like we've said, like clarity on like which performers and more information about who would be performing at the event would be helpful. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, please adjust your scores if you need to and raise your hand when you're done. Great. Okay, let's move on to impact.
Thanks, Michelle. So this application and grant will help pay the expense of producing a book professionally prepared by Keith and Holly Howe, featuring Impact Nebraska artists at work in their studios, including examples of their artwork and individual artist statements about their work. The grant funds will be used to pay Keith and Holly photographic images for meeting at individual locations, photographing artists in studios, page layouts, and costs of the publishing. They anticipate 32 books staying with Impact, and then 168 will be sold with profit to exhibiting venues.
All right, Tabitha, your thoughts?
Thanks. I thought this was a really well done application. The project documents and celebrates Nebraska artists through a book showcasing their workspaces, art, and creative processes in creating a valuable historical record. They said they'll feature 27 Nebraska artists, many of whom are award-winning professionals, and it'll highlight the quality and diversity of our artistic talent in Nebraska. Keith and Holly are nationally recognized photographers, adding a professional quality to the project. By making the book available at exhibitions across rural and urban venues, the project enhances audience connection to the art and its creators. I thought it holds strong artistic merit, offers educational, cultural, and historical significance to the community. I really appreciated the work samples that they provided, as well as the biographies. In the planning and evaluation section, I thought that it's being managed by a highly qualified team, with members bringing complementary experience to arts management, education, and more. The goal of creating a book to engage audiences with Nebraska artists was clearly defined, although I thought the outreach strategies could be expanded. While the subjective nature of evaluating viewer responses is acknowledged, you could add some more structural merits that would strengthen the assessment of the book's impact. The team's experience with similar projects enhances the feasibility, supported by plans for additional print runs if needed. Overall, the project, I thought, had a strong planning and potential impact, with a few slight improvements in the evaluation approach. I thought the project shows a strong commitment to community engagement by tailoring exhibitions to rural and underserved populations. They had significant emphasis on engaging with elderly and Hispanic demographics. They provided thoughtful accessibility measures such as ADA compliant venues, large print materials, and Spanish translations, making the inclusive and welcoming. The affordable book pricing is designed to fit low income budgets, and venues are supported by earning a markup on sales. They had great promotional strategies to leverage local partnerships and social media and direct outreach to schools and care facilities. Let's see. Yeah, that's pretty much my comments.
All right, thank you. Kate?
Hi, yes. There's 27 artists that were listed in the publication, and it says that it partners with the Prairie Arts Center and the Henry Moore Robert Henry Museum, and I wanted to really understand like how that partnership works. Like, is it an opening? Will the same people in the books be exhibiting in the shows? Are there dates set for those exhibits? So I was trying to really correlate the book to the public events and the public events back to the book. As always, I'm coming from a visual art background, so I think about who's jurying things, and it seems like this application was juried internally, meaning the members of the organization, which has been founded since 1985, and I found the applicants that were very qualified as far as community service and service on boards and active in their arts. So I can tell this is a very vibrant, art-loving group of people. But yeah, just a little bit of like an external juror versus an internal juror process makes it feel more validated. It can be really tricky. I work in a community arts center when people know each other. So like, how do you differentiate your relationships and formally show that? But Yeah, I think that just it says it's $18.70. You got an ISBN registration, and there was lots of documentation on how the actual book would be presented. And this is what I'm understanding is the second edition, or if I'm correct. But at any rate, this is not the first time you've published a book, so there's some experience in publishing witnessed. But I would like to see a little bit more about like folk art traditions or Native Nebraskan artists. There was a lot of emphasis on painting and drawing, which is excellent, but just kind of expanding to multiple media and really including or even searching out and calls for art and searching out so that the book is really broad-based. But what last thing I love about this project is we have something that people can keep for a long time. So it could be, documentation for future artists, and 50 years from now or 60 years from now, it serves as an archive. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Morgan?
I had some questions about how artists are selected to be featured in the book, how they're putting intention behind selecting from a diverse pool of artists. I also noticed in the budget, they separately had the cost of the books that they would keep, and then that they would give, I assume, to the artists featured, separate from the overall cost of creating the book. So it wasn't clear to me if they were essentially including the cost of that set of books twice. And there was no administration cost reflected in the budget. And then I personally would have liked to see more of an effort on the applicant's behalf in terms of making accessibility accommodations. A lot of that they were putting on the partnering venues that would host exhibitions. So like the Spanish translation inserts that they mentioned, it would be on the venues that had the books to provide those. And I would have liked to have seen more of an effort to engage audiences outside of who the venues are already reaching out to.
Thank you. Stephanie?
Yeah, I agree with what Morgan said there. I kind of felt the same way. Like it seemed like there was this I don't know, tension is not quite the right word, between the sort of COSAD and North Platte programming and then like the broader statewide reach of the book. One thing that stuck out to me quite a bit was that they don't, for me, don't do a good job of discussing who is in charge of the book layout and why. So it is clear that the photographers are experienced in that art form, but I really wanted more information about who is designing the book layout and working on that. I think for me, there's definitely the art that's within the book by the artist. Then there's the art of the photography that goes into it. But I think books are a form of art too. And I think that aspect has been given too little attention here. And then also too, in the evaluation, I really felt like the statement about it being subjective, I felt like that was just cutting themselves too short. Even because they've done this before, they should have a sense of what kind of markers of success there are and what those numbers or what that feedback is. So I felt like there was much more that they could have said in that. Let's see. And then let me make sure if I have anything else. Yeah, I did appreciate the letters of support. I thought those were very enthusiastic and did a lot to show the impact. But overall, for me, I wanted a lot more about the process of designing the book, who was involved in that and why. And then I really wanted much more related to the evaluation methods. So, yeah.
All right, thank you. Okay, please adjust your scores if you need to, and give me a thumbs up when you're ready to move on to the next application. Good. All right, well, let's move on to Jocelyn Castle and Gardens.
Thank you, Michelle. This grant application will help pay for the implementation and continuation of the guest artist program at the Jocelyn Castle and Gardens, and which is within the Castle and Cathedral Creative District. The district includes the Cathedral Arts Project, Cali Commons, and the Neighborhood Association, as well as Jocelyn Castle and Gardens. Any funds that are awarded will be used to pay the artist involved.
All right, thank you. Kate, your thoughts?
Hi, yeah. So Paul Highhorse is the artist that is going to be featured, and there was a lot of documentation of the artist work. My thoughts were mainly about the history of the castle and how it relates to, Native Nebraskan Indigenous artists and that correlation. And the application says that the funds will go, go to the artist, and that the artist would be working from January to June. It shows expenses for utilities, supervision, liaison, that kind of thing in the application packet. It talks about a mentorship program. I would love to hear more about it. Is it mentorship with a high school? Is it a mentorship with an individual artist in the community? Is it mentorship with whom is this mentorship relationship about? And I guess one of the things is there was a little bit of information that the artists would have to promote themselves. And so this is one artist and one residency. It includes housing, which is a way of supporting one artist's in-depth practice and how it relates to your community. But I think there should be, just as a kind of a aesthetic thing, days when artists are allowed to have no visitors and days when visitors can come, and just some information about what the expectations are on that artist. Because this application felt like it gave the artist, you had to talk to everyone walking through the castle. You had to present to the local schools. You had to make your own publicity signs. There was a lot of requirements for the artist, and sensitivity around cultural identity and space, and sensitivity around specifically the requirements of what would be practical, reasonable, while also having uninterrupted art time to be in depth in the work. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Morgan?
I share Kate's thoughts. I liked that there seemed to be an extensive plan to collect qualitative and quantitative data. It would have been helpful to see some more detail on the income side of the budget. And then I also noticed that there were some things on the expenses side that I had questions about, like they had talked about yard signs, but had only allocated $100 for that in the budget. And then the demographics that they provided, it wasn't clear to me if that was demographics of the neighborhood or if it wasn't clear to me what geographic area those demographics were representing, as well as the intended audience. So it made it difficult for me to understand how they're responding to a specific community need or the specific community they're trying to reach, whether it was the Indigenous community, whether it was local residents within that neighborhood. There was just lacking specificity for me there. I appreciated they've identified several partners to collaborate with that have strong connections to the Indigenous community, and I liked that the outreach activities spanned a wide array of mediums, and thought that the letters of support were strong.
Thank you. Tabitha?
Yeah, I echo a lot of what Morgan and Kate just said. I guess in the outreach section, I would like, great partnerships are listed, but I would like, just more information about how those activities are going to be implemented. What's the plan for them? Yeah, stick with that.
Thank you. Stephanie?
I don't think I have anything to add.
All right, great. Well, please adjust your scores as needed and give me a thumbs up when you're ready to move on to the next application. Okay, all right, great. Let's move on to the Little Red Hen Theater.
Great. So this grant application will help fund the Little Red Hen Theater's season in 2025, which is entitled Any Dream Will Do. Activities included in this grant include productions of Betrayal Behind the Scenes, an original murder mystery event, Sense and Sensibility by Kate Hamill, based on the novel by Jane Austen, and their annual drama camp, which is an education program for students in grades K through 8. And also included in this application is the first of the 3 Wakefield markets that will feature live musicians performances. So the grant funds will be used to offset production costs for the theatrical shows, hire creative artists, including a choreographer, drama specialist, and playwright to assist with the productions and education programs, and to also fund the artists at the Wakefield Market.
Great. Tabitha, your thoughts?
I thought this project has obvious strong artistic merit, offering varied and high quality performing with interactive and educational elements that resonate with diverse audiences. A blend of traditional and innovative events makes this an artistically engaging and accessible project for the community. I really appreciated that the work samples that were provided showed past performances. Let's see, the artist bios were well described as well. The project director, I thought, had extensive experience in theater and arts administration. Each program had some clear objectives for participant engagement, skill development, audience satisfaction, and it was all supported by evaluation tools. They mentioned surveys, ticket tracking, and performance rubrics. I thought that the way they've planned their timeline made it feasible and impactful. I thought they might add in long-term tracking to promote community growth, and maybe add in a contingency plan for attendance fluctuations or volunteer recruitment challenges that could further solidify the project feasibility. I did think it was a lot to include in a project grant. It kind of seems like they're trying to include the entire operations of what they've got going on. So maybe just considering that. The project displays a deep understanding of the community it serves. Programming is thoughtfully designed to be inclusive, with efforts to reach diverse populations through low-cost tickets, flexible volunteer opportunities, translated materials, and targeted outreach for underserved groups such as seniors and Spanish-speaking households. A more formalized approach to expanding partnerships, particularly with additional community organizations, could increase reach even further.
Thank you. Kate?
Hi, yeah. So I enjoyed reading about the organization, and I love looking at all the photos and documentation. It makes me want to go to an event. It says I think I agree. It was a little bit like everything and anything went with this application. It was like music and the Wakefield Farmers Market educational program, drama camps for kids, murder mystery performances, and a local theater group. It says it's a volunteer-based organization, which I realize takes a lot of energy and effort to coordinate. It's much more difficult than an organization that might have, a big staff. It was founded in the 90s, so I got a lot of information about your organization. I agree, Adam Goes has an MFA from Chicago, which was kind of nice to see that there's some internal and external expertise. So the costs range from $9 to $11, which seems pretty affordable. I think my thoughts are, it's kind of like such a broad amount of stuff in this pack. Like each one is kind of a unique cultural gift, and really focusing on like elaborately building out who you're reaching, who your target reaching audience is. I thought this was a well documented application. Like I got a sense this is a lot of experience in grant writing. My one question is, it says it's multicultural, but when I was looking for the multicultural elements in all the different parts of your application, I noticed there was Spanish speaking music at the market, and Latinx musicians were playing in your music outreach. But I would really love to see like a fully Spanish production play where the primary language of the production is Spanish versus English with, an English translation. Or I felt like there was more outreach in the community engagement versus in the actual theatrical performances per se, as far as how they were selected. But excellent documentation, really great photos, really good event planning, those kinds of things.
Thank you. Morgan?
Yep, I echo Tabitha and Kate's thoughts. The only other thing I'd add was there was a lot of clear and measurable goals that they talked about. But the one piece that was lacking for me was gathering information regarding like the audience experience. A lot of that evaluation was around demographics of ticket buyers or like the vendor experience, but there wasn't any clear plan that I gathered for gathering feedback on what just an audience member's experience was like.
Thank you. And Stephanie?
I don't think I have anything really to add. I think overall this was a really good application. So yeah.
All right. Well, please adjust your scores if you need to and give me a thumbs up when you're ready to move on to the next application. Okay, great. Let's move on to the Metropolitan Community College.
Thanks, Michelle. I just wanted to check in with our panelists. My thought was we would do one more review and then take a break. Is everyone feeling up to that? Okay.
That works for me.
Great. All right, so the Metropolitan Community College's 34th Annual International Fair will be held on April 10th from noon to 6 p.m. at the South Omaha campus. Diverse artistic talent will take the stage throughout the day, along with the opportunity to visit cultural and informational booths. Audience members may attend in person, or they can also connect online. This grant will help pay for artists that will perform at MCC's International Fair, as well as the travel and lodging expenses that are incurred. Multiple artists are in process of being scheduled, and as of the time of the submission, they would be confirmed shortly.
All right, great. Morgan, your thoughts?
I was really impressed with the artistic quality. I thought the artists that they were able to confirm and talked about are artists that have been doing it for a long time. They have critical acclaim, and they've had strong partners that are reflective of the South Omaha community. The planning and evaluation, I struggled a little bit to understand exactly who they were trying to attract. It wasn't clear to me if it was MCC students, South Omaha residents, just the community at large. I loved some of the goals, but was missing how they would track them, specifically offer access to the arts to those who may not typically have the opportunity and increase the community's lifelong cultural learning opportunities for all participants. Wasn't sure how they plan to measure that. The incentivizing completing a post-event survey, I thought was really smart and encourages participation in that. The budget didn't have any administrative costs, which for an event this size, I was surprised to not see anything included there. The student population and local resident population relative to the location of the fair both seem very diverse. I would have liked more information about how MCC creates avenues for participation and involvement from those communities as part of the planning process. The list of partners was really extensive, and I thought the Mexican American Historical Society letter of support was extremely strong.
Thank you. Stephanie?
Yeah. So I think, and Morgan, you might have said this, so I apologize, but I think the naturalization ceremony sounds like a really beautiful addition to the fair. And then the only other comment I had about the artistic quality is I think I was kind of wondering in terms of the work samples, maybe in future applications, selecting something that's different, given the fact that one of those samples required a Facebook account to really dive deeply into the organization's photos. And then with the second artist, because they're on the roster and not actually covered monetarily under the grant, I just wondered why, why they chose that artistic sample, and maybe they could have included something else. And then I agree about the evaluation. I also was a little concerned about the survey, because if the survey is really reflecting on the goals, there's so many goals. I was worried about the length of the survey. And then, yeah, I otherwise, I think I really agree with Morgan's assessment.
All right, Tabitha?
I agree with everything that was said. I don't have anything else to add.
Thank you. And Kate?
Hi, yeah, I agree as well. My thoughts were to maybe it's this whole international festival, so maybe like subcategorize which groups you're targeting as far as what international cultures. And I was just curious because it's such a big, broad proposal as far as the targeted performers, and then I just would like to see some subcategories with a little bit more detail on the specific population groups. But it sounds like you've thought about like public buses coming in and reaching school audiences and engaging your community. I think you're partnering with the community college, and you have an infrastructure there of support for facilities and those kinds of things, which could help make it more comfortable for visitors. But overall, it's a good application as far as the goals of having the festival. I just would like to see more specifics on who's performing and how you would organize it based on what cultures.
All right, thank you. Please adjust your scores as you need to, and give me a thumbs up when you are done. All right, super. Okay, Rachel, break time?
Yeah, let's take a break. Let's come back right at 10.
Okay, all
Sounds
right.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Kate and Stephanie, whenever you're back, just go ahead and turn your video on so we know.
All right, it looks like everyone's back. Let's move on to the Shelter Belt Theater.
Right. So the Shelter Belt is requesting support for its production of My Mother's Lesbian Jewish Wiccan Wedding. That's a mouthful. A musical by David Hine and Irene Sankoff, the writing team behind the smash hit Come From Away. The Shelter Belt will stage this production, which will be an Omaha premiere with local artists at its new location in the Omar Baking Building. The show will be the second musical in the Shelter Belt's new space, which it acquired after a 5-year hiatus from producing live theater. The funds will help with production costs, which will include licensing fees, stipends for directors, actors, pit musicians, and designers, score rental, set and costume materials, and marketing materials.
All right, Morgan, your thoughts?
For artistic quality, I felt like they had chosen a piece that had, critical acclaim. I also felt like I had a clear understanding of how they will select the director and music director roles. I appreciated that they were going to be offering or marketing the audition opportunities outside of just their own social media accounts. They talked about using the Omaha on Stage and Theater Arts Guild and community calendars in the area. So I appreciated that they were making intentional effort to reach other folks outside of those that may already know of the theater. Planning and evaluation, I felt like there were clear quantitative goals stated around number of shows performed and attendance. The qualitative goals they listed were largely around serving the LGBTQ plus community and increasing the visibility of the arts. They included evaluation methods of surveys, social media reactions, box office numbers, attendance at the audience talkbacks after performance, and feedback from staff, contractors, and performances. For me, it would have been helpful on the budget side to understand how they determine pay rates for the performers, and if that was comparable to other similarly sized theaters. I personally felt like it was low, but I'm not part of the theater community. So for outreach and engagement, knowing that the LGBTQ plus community and allies is the intended audience, it would have been helpful to have a better understanding of that community as it relates to the Walnut Hill neighborhood where the theater is located. The confirmed partners in Omaha for us and Koenig Dunn will add value and lived experience and perspective to the post-show talkbacks. And I really appreciated that they were having the post-show talkbacks to begin with. And so I felt those letters of support were also very strong.
Great. Tabitha?
Yeah, in the artistic section, I didn't have any notes. I thought it sounded absolutely amazing, and I would absolutely love to attend this. Under planning and evaluation, I thought they had very clear, fantastic goals. I really appreciated how they knew kind of expected audience numbers of performances, things like that. They made their goals measurable, which I don't think is a requirement here, but it definitely strengthens the application. They gave great evaluation methods. I did really appreciate as well that they narrowed the demographics of the community served to the actual neighborhood that they're located in, rather than just giving me the demographics of Omaha. And then I thought the outreach, special attention to reaching the deaf community was also really wonderful.
Thank you. Stephanie?
I don't really think I have anything to add. yeah, there were just like a lot of really great things in this application. I really liked the letters. I thought they were really heartfelt and supportive. So yeah.
Great. And Kate?
Hey, yeah, I guess one thing it mentioned was that there'd be in the lobby of like a visual art show to go along with the exhibit, but it didn't actually list which artist, would be curated and would it correlate with the exhibit somehow. So maybe a little bit more information about that correlation. But one thing I really loved, it was a very organized application, was there was a QR code on the show pamphlet. So people could take the survey while they're at the performance, like in the intermission, which I think is way more successful than doing it when you get home later. So I thought that was really a clever way of like engaging your audience for feedback. It was a really well organized list of partnering organizations. It says it could serve over 81,000 people in the community, and it has a pay what you can approach, which I appreciate because that is an accessibility limit for many people. And so having that option and then kind of implementing in a way where it doesn't make anyone feel self-conscious or uncomfortable, but just having that be part of your platform really indicates wanting to reach everyone. So overall, you moved to a new space and you documented the space well. And yeah, it was an organized application.
All right, thank you. So please adjust your scores if you need to and give me a thumbs up when you're ready to proceed. Okay, let's move on to Skate Fest Omaha.
This grant application will help pay the artists, musicians, and media who perform and creatively capture the Skate Fest held at Seymour Smith Park. They anticipate 600 people will be in attendance, and any funds awarded will pay artists, musicians, and media involved with the Skate Fest Seymour Smith event.
Great. Morgan, your thoughts?
I liked that they talked about a wide variety of artistic mediums that would be included, but I was lacking clarity on what the details of those experiences looked like. Like I was missing, I think, a lot of details around outside of the skate component, what the other artistic mediums looked like, what those experiences looked like. Are they demonstrations? Are they hands-on experiences? Um, and they hadn't at the time of the application hadn't confirmed artists, and I also was lacking detail on how they'll determine who to include and what they're sort of looking for internally as they make those decisions. Um, yeah, I had written they didn't specify how they would identify, recruit, or select artists for the event. Planning and evaluation, there were several measurable goals listed, though the majority were around attendance numbers and demographics of the artists and vendors. It wasn't clear if there were opportunities for general attendees or spectators to provide feedback about the experience. And then outreach and engagement, additional information to support. They talked about the demographics of where the event is not typically reflective of the diversity of the audience that attends, but I was missing information on how they know that or how they came to that conclusion. There seems to be significant BIPOC representation in participants from the vendors, so I really appreciated that. The letter of support from Partners for Livable Omaha, who would provide the mobile stage, was really compelling. The other letter of support being from a company based in LA I personally didn't find that as compelling to show community support. Overall, I think it's a really cool event. But I still had a lot of questions, or I still wanted a lot more detail or information regarding the artistic experiences that are available at the event.
Thank you. Tabitha?
I don't have anything else to add.
Okay, great. Stephanie?
I just had a couple of things. I totally agree with Morgan about the emphasis on the art and the performers being somewhat lacking. I did want to mention, though, that I think the orientation they do for the participating artists is a really great idea. And I don't know if I'm the only one that saw this, but it looked to me like the timeline was out of date. So I would just say in future applications, just, even though you may be doing the same thing for every kind of event, just make sure that it's updated. And then, Morgan, you might have mentioned this, but I really appreciated seeing some accessibility considerations included in the budget. Yeah, and I think that's all I would add.
All right, thank you. And Kate?
Hey, yeah, just to recap, you said there would be about 600 people that would attend. And I feel like this application did cover a broad range of this entire state. Like, even though it's a regional event, I do feel like it seems like people travel. You mentioned people travel. I think the planning, I would agree that the timeline was just practicality. I love seeing a long, extended timeline where you're giving yourself mental, emotional, and psychological space to really make this successful without rushing towards the end. So I think just giving yourself the space to really plan this thing in your timeline and then updating the dates for your own success. I would like more information about like a rain day. I know we can't tell what the weather happens, but just a contendum of the application, like since it's an outdoor festival, how does, what's just your policy as far as inclement weather or not having any policy at all? That's a policy too, but listing it. And then my thoughts were, it says it's going to really activate the public school system. And I can see this being like a really great way to reach kids, that are interested in skate culture and their own growth. But as far as it said NA, if I'm understanding correctly, for accessibility needs. And there are a lot of different adaptable wheelchair devices or adaptable bikes. And I think it would be really wonderful in the application if outreach was made for like accessible mobile wheeled vehicles, like whether it's a bike that has an accessibility pool that a person who can't, pedal can be pulled, or some inclusion of accessibility, not just in kind of getting in and out of the event, but actually featuring like accessible, could really promote positive self-image for neurodivergent people and make it even more inclusive than it already is.
Right, thank you. Well, please adjust your scores if you need to and give me a thumbs up when we're ready to proceed. Okay, let's move on to the University of Nebraska at Omaha.
Thanks, Michelle. This grant application is to help pay and attract more Native American dancers and head staff to the 14th annual powwow that is scheduled for April 19th at the University of Nebraska in Omaha. This vibrant event, which has the theme of "We Are Urban, from Reservation to City," brings various tribal nations and community to Omaha and UNO for a day of cultural celebration. They estimate 3,000 people will attend the one-day powwow. The funds will be used to pay the dancers and head staff, and also possibly marketing and media.
Great. Stephanie, your thoughts?
Yeah. So really, I wanted more in the artistic quality section. I was a little confused early on in the project description and artistic merit about Reina Hernandez's role. I learned throughout the application that they're designing the t-shirts, but I think making that clear early on would improve the application. I also just overall felt like in this section, a discussion of the dances and the participants in the dances was really missing. That's one thing that I, in applications for powwows I've read before, that I really appreciate, is really filling out that discussion of the specific activities that will happen during that. I also really, I did think the video was really well made, but I was a little, and this might be nitpicky, I was a little confused at how the music connected to it. So I think just an explanation in the YouTube description or in the work sample description would make that a little clearer. I just kind of was listening and feeling like a disconnect. And in some ways, I would almost rather listen to the powwow itself. In the planning and evaluation, the admin bios tell what their role is with the university, But I think in this section, it would be helpful to also know some of their background information related to the skill sets and experience needed for putting on an event like this. In the goals section, goal 1 is important, but I think more connection between it and the activities needed to be made. And also like stating more explicitly in the artistic merit response up above and the artistic quality. I think a connection between 959, the activities and the powwow itself, the merit, all those things I think could be kind of connected between this section and the previous section. Let's see, there's a goal 4 listed in the evaluation, but I didn't see it in the actual goals response. So just making sure those things line up will improve the application. And having some clear benchmarks in that section will be really helpful too. So for example, like how many flyers do you want to distribute? And then including some post-event activities in the timeline, such as feedback reviews or a visioning session for next year will help set you up well for the next year. And I may be wrong, but I didn't see a stipend for Raina. And then I was unclear, like in the budget, unclear on what her works is. So just a little bit more tying the budget into the overall narrative. And I'd also love to know who the invited drum groups are. And then again, in the budget, United Healthcare was mentioned as a sponsor, but I didn't see them in the budget. So just making sure the budget kind of lines up with everything that's stated in the narrative is helpful. And the demographics focus on UNO, but my knowledge of this event is that it draws in the broader community typically. So I was interested in seeing some demographics that were UNO, but also outside of that too, maybe to the larger Omaha area. Let's see. And then the way this reads a little bit, it sounds like it's really, I don't know, I felt like in some ways the outreach and engagement section was like a little bit truncated, because I know this draws such a big event. I felt like they could expand beyond just the discussion of the 4 tribal nations of Nebraska and the UNO students. So I think that there was more to be said there. They're clearly serving, you know, their community and people who are left out of kind of arts funding, and people who don't necessarily have access to arts events. But I think a lot more could be said about the importance of Indigenous art forms. So I just really wanted more of that. And then also too, both the letters are written from people within the university system. And I think for an event like this, obtaining at least one letter from a participant or community member is really important. Those are my comments.
Thank you. Tabitha?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Stephanie said. I think overall this application just needed more details. Could go in, you know, we can't see exactly how much space was allowed for each question, but it does seem truncated. I thought the artistic quality could be improved. I thought the cultural side of things was very evident, but the actual artistic activities that are going on, I would like to know more about. Also throughout the application, and this is coming from my background is mainly in grant writing, but you want to speak not with I, because it sounds, you don't want the panel to think that the money is going to you as an individual, because this is to support organizations. So I would just think about that. I also was just wondering a lot in the outreach and engagement section about what the actual events are beyond maybe interactions with students. And then I'll just echo what Stephanie said about letters of support. You always want to try and get third-party support rather than people within your own organization. You know, I realize that the university is a large place, but getting a community member or another community partner to write that letter of support would have strengthened the application.
Thank you. Morgan?
Echo everything Steph and Tabitha said. The only thing I would add, specific to the budget, there was talk about the t-shirts that they plan to give away in the narrative and in the timeline, but I didn't see those reflected in the budget at all. So again, just making sure the budget lines up with the narrative.
Thank you. Kate?
Hi, yeah, so it says it's going to reach 3,000 people, but it's a free event, which I appreciate that it's free for the public. It says that it keeps the vendor fees low so that if you have artisans selling things there, it's really difficult, you know, to make money and produce things and sell things. So I appreciate you considered your vendor cost, keeping that low in your application. I also appreciated that you had firearm safety as part of these events. It's just such a critical part of successful event management. The theme, I thought one thing I liked about this application was it has this overarching theme of it besides the event, which is to educate about the Indian Relocation Act of 1956. So I just appreciated like having the event, but then having one specific educational component that's like really pushed through as a message. And one thing I liked about the application was that it was to me, it seemed very specific to this target population. Like, how do we support and also celebrate, you know, our Native North American cultures. And it seemed to reach like a specific audience versus being this like very broad and overreaching application. It says there's cash awards to the artists listed and the grant application and a juried art exhibit. So it has like a, I think it is trying to be very inclusive of visual art as well as traditional art forms. And I love the idea of the billboards. I know it seems old school in our modern world, but I think it's a really effective way of promoting the event. So those are my thoughts.
Right, thank you. So please adjust your scores and let me know when you're ready to proceed. Okay, great. Let's move on to the Wakefield Progressive Incorporated.
Thank you, Michelle. This grant application is to help Wakefield Progressive pay for artists performing during the 5th year of the Wakefield Party. The party will be held on June 7th on Main Street in downtown Wakefield. The event draws over 400 visitors from the tri-state area. Any funds awarded will be used solely to pay for artists for the event.
All right, Tabitha, your thoughts?
Yeah, I enjoyed this application quite a bit. I thought it did a great job of describing community engagement. It's family friendly, had discounted rates for seniors, lots of great partnerships with local organizations. The artistic lineup was diverse. It has features both local and nationally recognized talent. I appreciated that it takes place in downtown and has a professional production quality. I thought it seems like a well-organized, community-driven event with great management. Several team members were listed, all contributing to the project's success. Let's see. It was obvious that they're committed to inclusivity. It had great partnerships like with Michael Foods, reaching out to the Latino community and providing discounts for seniors and families. They gave clear goals and had both quantitative and qualitative methods to track those goals. I also appreciated that they have some support for other organizations in the area, including the Little Red Hen Theater, and had a dedication with the project to cultural and economic growth for their community. They described actively engaging with the Hispanic community and strong community partnerships to help them expand their reach to underserved individuals. They had great marketing materials, and they actually extended their plans to extend outreach to surrounding rural communities. And then they also listed other discounts to like veterans and active duty military. I thought that was awesome as well. Good. The budget made sense, and I enjoyed the letters of support.
Thank you. Kate, your input?
Hey, yeah, so it's an outdoor musical festival, and it says Spanish and English performances. Tegan Nissen. Anyway, the people who are curating it or putting it together are also performing at the event. But I did listen to the music and try to get an idea of the quality. And it's obviously it mentions American Idol and The Voice contestants being part of it. And it just seems like it would be something that would really benefit the population as far as aesthetic. But also there's an artist market. So it was kind of unclear if it had a vendor's fee in this artist market or if what exactly how it would support, the local artisans. It listed Michael Foods. It says children 10 and under give free. It's a late night festival. I would like a lot more information on like heat advisories. How are you including heat related issues around how this event is managed for cooling stations or climate related needs for accommodation. It also mentioned a post-event survey, but I would like a little bit more information on how you're doing that. It did give a detailed budget. And so it says it's in its 5th year. It's also a rural, it seems like a very rural location, so it would benefit a rural community.
Great. Morgan, do you have anything more to add?
Nothing specific to add. Overall, I was just really impressed with this application. I appreciated how much intentionality and thought they put into embracing diverse communities and also responding to feedback they've received from previous year's events.
Thank you. And Stephanie?
I just had a couple things. I may be mistaken, but I have in my notes here that I saw that the administrators are also on the selection committee. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that, but I would try and vary that year after year because it can be really easy for event organizers to stick too close to their own vision rather than that of the community. So just kind of varying up that committee year after year will help kind of keep it fresh and make sure you're kind of getting outside voices in that process. And then the other thing I wanted to mention to you in the, oh gosh, where is it? In the, I think it's in the planning and evaluation. I'm really impressed that they're using Placer AI to learn about their audience. I'm familiar with that tool, and it's just it provides so much valuable information. So I was really impressed that they kind of identified that and are using that. I think it's a great way to go. Yeah, that's all I had to add.
All right, thank you. Well, please adjust your scores and let me know when you're ready to proceed. All right, we will move on to wall space for artists and audiences.
Wall Space recently received their 501c3 status, which allows them to expand the opportunity to empower artists to exhibit their work and enable audiences to experience art in a community-based venue. Grant funds will help support monthly exhibits, which have been planned out from January through June. The funds that are received will help defray artists' costs for self-curated exhibitions and a purpose-designed gallery. And wall space does not represent the artists, and they do not take a percentage of the sales.
Thank you. Kate, your thoughts?
Yeah, so this is a, like I said, new 501c3 organization, and it seems to be really run by Michael Farrell, the sort of board member, and he's also exhibiting in the shows, but it pays a $600 stipend, which I appreciate, to the artist. It says it's at least 6 or 7 artists, and it's pretty clear cut. They're going to have their own aesthetic license to exhibit how they feel best represents their work, which is helpful for artists to feel validated and support their community. I think one thing I would like a little bit more information about, your 2 reference letters are from one of the participating artists, as well as a community member that's on the Country Club Association. But just giving a little bit, you kind of throw it back on the artist as far as how it's going to engage the community. It's open on the weekends. So just a little bit more detail on what that would be specifically would be helpful. I know that's 6 or 7 artists, 6 or 7 different community engagement activities, but it's kind of left to the artists to tell us what their engagement level is, which I would like maybe to be a little bit more specific about target audiences in the shows. Why are the shows targeting these audiences? And how it relates to the needs of the community, specifically per exhibit, with very specific events coordinated. I think it would help build the programming that you're trying to do in your application.
Thank you. Morgan, your insight?
I had very similar thoughts to Kate. While there are some goals I've outlined a clear evaluation plan for, like attendance and email signups and donations, it's unclear how they'll evaluate attracting a diversified audience or who they want to attract to these exhibitions. So having more details regarding evaluation plan for soliciting attendee feedback would have been helpful. It also wasn't clear to me that there was an underserved community that they're trying to reach, and they didn't provide a ton of data on the demographics of their audience outside of the majority of the email subscribers being located in Southeast Nebraska. I also had written they seem to be relying heavily on displaying artists to do the majority of the heavy lifting in regards to bringing in a more diverse audience. It's unclear if there are outreach efforts designed to increase accessibility and community partnerships. Yeah, and overall just wasn't super clear how determinations are made on recruiting and selecting artists to take advantage of this opportunity and prioritizing diversity within those artists.
Thank you. Tabitha, any additional comments?
No, I agree with what's been said.
All right, thank you. And Stephanie?
The only thing I wanted to note is that I really appreciated that they added context to the budget and narrative by using the text box on the budget. That's exactly what that box is there for. And so I just want to say, hey, great job on that. Eyes open. Yeah, thanks.
Super. All right. Well, please adjust your scores as needed and let me know when you're ready to proceed. Okay, and let's move on to Why Arts Incorporated.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. This grant will help pay artist Hugo Zamorano, who will lead the Community Vision Mural Expansion Project. This represents phase 2 of a 3-part project collaboration between Y Arts and the Barbara White's Community Engagement Center. Hugo will work with 15 to 20 art students to create 2 10 by 60-foot murals on UNO's campus. In addition to the artists and students, this project will benefit thousands of people who pass through the location every day. Any funds awarded will be used to pay the artist.
Great. Kate, your insight into this?
Yeah, no, I looked up the artist and it's part of the registry and a very active member of this community. So there's always this, is the artist from a local community or is the artist from out of town, and how does that relate to the project? I think the reference letters, we've been talking about this throughout the day, but maybe having an external and internal reference letter process would be helpful in building momentum on exactly how this is reaching the community. I like the idea of budgeting per section. That seems pretty rational on a big project like a 163-foot mural. Obviously, that is a massive undertaking. So having all the help of the students and integrating it into the educational component seems effective for like getting the project done, but also making sure that it's strategically funded. My question was, it really specifically meant that it would help underserved communities, specifically like getting feedback from the community, like you're going to build the imagery based on feedback from the community. But I would like a lot more information about what that feedback process is like. Like it says surveys on symbols, objects, content. But it mentioned including representation of people with disabilities. But I mean, is it just representation of them physically on the mural? Like, how does that incorporate people, neurodivergent people, in the process of this very large undertaking? And it's a very sensitive subject, so just expanding on what exactly you're talking about there would have helped me understand, what the representation is versus just maybe a symbolism or how they actually physically included. That would be helpful. It seemed a very well organized application, and it has a mentor-mentee component, which I think can be something that future artists can take and use for their learning.
Thank you. Stephanie, your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I had questions about the content of the mural as well. I think some things to add to the discussion are that I mean, in future applications, I would not submit a 52-page work sample. Oftentimes, reviewers like us are doing this as a volunteer thing, and having a 52-page work sample, that is a lot. Keeping it to 10 pages, or even selecting something else that shows the artist's work or the location or something like that can be much better for the overall application. The artist is really highly qualified to lead this and work with students for sure. Let's see. I am really concerned that the mural painting is taking place in July or in January and February. I went to UNO, and the location that this is taking place in is like a wind tunnel. So I mean, it's miserable that time of year. It seems really unfair to the artist to ask them to work in those conditions. So when I read that, I really felt like there's likely to be delays in this timeline because of that. And I was glad to see that there is ASL interpretation in the budget. I mean, one overall question I had throughout this application is, why is the university not wholly funding this project? I understand that there's a partnership with the organizations in the CEC with UNO, but as budgets go, UNO has a much bigger budget than Y Arts does. So I really wanted to know what that structure was like and why. And then I also too felt like it was a little uneven when it got to the outreach and engagement section. It seemed like earlier in the application there was a discussion about the larger community, but then in the actual outreach section, it seemed to shrink in on the students somewhat. So I also was kind of having trouble aligning the university's role in terms of that outward community outreach too. So I really wanted like a lot more clarity on why this financial and outreach and engagement structure exists and why it is the way it is. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Tabitha, any additional comments?
And the only thing I'll add is that I too was wondering or wanted more clarity, I guess, on the relationship between Y Arts and UNO. Both of the letters of support are from UNO as well, so it probably would have strengthened the application to maybe just have one from UNO plus one from another community partner.
Thank you. And Morgan?
I agree with everything that was said. There was a lot of discussion about showcasing artists with disabilities and or furthering diversity and inclusivity, but not a clear plan on how that's being done. And it also wasn't reflected in the timeline or budget. They did state that they'll work with program evaluators to develop the criteria and metrics for measuring impact, but it wasn't clear to me who program evaluators are. I appreciated the selection of an artist that's representative of the Hispanic or Latino community supports being responsive to the statistics they shared regarding changes in the demographics of Omaha. And again, there's an emphasis on engaging artists with disabilities, but unclear how they will be included and be part of that process. And also had the same thought about the letters of support both being from UNO. I would have been more compelled by at least one of them being from somebody outside of the project.
All right, thank you. Well, please adjust your scores as needed and let me know when you're ready to proceed. All right, thank you. Now that all the applications have been discussed and scored, we'll take a 5-minute break. During this time, NAC staff will tally the scores and prepare information for final discussion. When panelists reconvene, we'll review the procedures and make final determinations. The final portion of this meeting is closed to the public, so we will end the live stream now. So to all of those watching today, thank you for joining us and goodbye.